Last time on Highschool DxD is what I would normally say, but this time things get kind of weird moving into the 4th season of the anime, bringing in a lot of changes. Changes which I have mixed feelings about. So whether these changes are for the better or worse, I'll leave it up to you to decide. The 4th season of Highschool DxD is one I wasn't initially excited for, considering how the previous season was rough on its storytelling and its inclusion of filler. And to add to my ever increasing caution was the fact that the 4th season, labeled Highschool DxD Hero, would be done by an entirely different studio. Season 1 to 3 had been animated by Studio T&K, who are behind such greats as School Days and Redo of Healer, and the 4th season has switched over to Studio Passione, who are behind stuff like Citrus and Interspecies Reviewers. Needless to say, both studios were more than capable of handling the series, if you know what I mean. But if you've been watching anime long enough, you know a studio change is often met with a lot of raised eyebrows and rarely delivers the same quality the previous studio put out. One Punch Man is a good example of this. Heck, even now, there are rumors that MAPPA will be animating season 3, which just makes me feel bad for the MAPPA animators even more. You may be wondering why the series went through a studio change. Well, it's a pretty interesting reason. The series author, Ichibe Ishibumi, was pretty mad about the creative liberties T&K took with the story of the 3rd season. Turns out they cut out a bunch of stuff like important character moments, etc., coupled with the addition of filler would make any author rightfully mad. I didn't know authors had that much power in the runnings of an anime, but mad respect to him for deciding how his series goes. The move to Passione was an attempt to refresh and upgrade the anime, and in one way the anime was going to do that was by updating the art style in order to be more accurate to the light novel. For me, the art style change gave me serious whiplash. I was a big fan of the previous art style. The sharper designs gave the characters more edge that fits right into the demonic world they lived in. The style was pretty reminiscent of early 2000s anime, and it really grew on me. The new designs are a lot more rounder and don't make them look as cool as they used to, but it brings a lot more polish to the series. The colors are brighter and better and the backgrounds don't look muted and washed out anymore, which all around makes the anime feel a lot more modern. I loved a lot of the new designs, like Issei, Asi and Azazel looked better, but then there were some that didn't look quite good to me, like Koneko and Kiba, and then there were some redesigns that hit me with psychic damage, like Sarah Og went from this to this and became completely unrecognizable. But for me, the absolute worst redesign would have to be Valley. He went from a cool edgelord to a discount Dante twink. But eventually the new designs grew on me and by the 3rd episode I had fully adjusted to them. And frankly, I welcomed this new change. Okay, so before we get into the story of Highschool DxD Hero, there's one more thing the new studio does, as if as a final act of rebellion. They completely retcon most of the previous season. They snapped that whole balance breaker Rias out of existence and picked things up from the Deodora arc where Issei activated his Juggernaut drive, went berserk and humbled Shalpa. While most of the events go the same as before, this time, rather than Rias using the power of love or whatever to snap Issei out of it, they bring out a friggin' projector to play his grabbing dragon nursery rhyme to calm him down and use the power of boobies to break him out of it. The rest of the episode goes on like before. Great Red shows up, Valley and Issei become rivals, etc, etc. But then there's also something extra added towards the end. We cut to some mysterious fellow lying in a field of flowers. He's met by fucking Fried Zelsen. That's right, guess Fried was never killed in the previous season and we just have to accept that he's here now again. Fried informs this person about Shalba's defeat and asks him what he'll do next. He doesn't say much, but he does say his sacred gear, the true Longinus, will propel him forward regardless. How foreboding. All in all, this retcon is a pretty good one, but the only problem I have with it would be the fact that it also retcons Rias' true confession to Issei at the end of the last season. And now we can finally kick off with the true Highschool DxD Hero experience. Our story continues with the club back at the Grammary House in the Underworld. A few fan service is thrown at us, which is normal at this point. The real highlight of this episode would be the sparring match between Issei and Sarah Og. It's a test of strength between the two and Sarah Og is no pushover. He is lauded as the strongest young devil of their generation. His power is pure strength alone. He doesn't have any special abilities or technique, he's all muscle, having trained his body to the absolute limit. His fight with Issei is crazy. They are just throwing punches at each other and that's it. The fight helps Issei realize where it is he's lacking, and you can see him slowly trying to do better as the fight progresses. It ends with a draw, with them forming a broship, promising each other to have a rematch when Issei gets stronger. The first episode mainly sets out to really distinct itself from the previous studio. Studio Passione proved that they weren't here to play around, and it shows. This small bout between the two of them was a fight that was already leagues ahead of all the other fights in terms of animation. The fight had actual flow and fluidity, and you could feel the impact of every hit. It's setting the bar for what to expect this season, and it's got me hyped for whatever the anime would be throwing my way. With the fight over, the crew head back to the human world. Issei's class has to prepare for a trip to Kyoto, which is where the next arc will be taking place. What wacky antics will Issei get into in Kyoto? We'll just have to find out. On the train to Kyoto, we find out that Issei can actually access something like a sacred gear spirit world, which hosts all the previous wielders of the gear. Yeah, kind of like the Avatar in their past lives, but he can't exactly talk to them because they are sort of in a vegetative state, well, save for one user. This is Elsha, the strongest woman to wield the sacred gear. She introduces herself to Issei and talks about another user, the strongest man to wield the sacred gear, with a notable feat of defeating the White Dragon twice, but he has no intention of revealing himself to Issei right now. He had Elsha deliver a box to him, the box that is said to hold his potential, power that, if he's not careful, would destroy him. But with his resolve firm, he opens it, and he's suddenly brought back to reality. Nothing really happens and Issei doesn't feel any different, but before he can think about it, his thought process is interrupted by his friends groping each other out of nowhere. His friend, Matsuda, was suddenly overcome with the strong urge to fondle some fun bags, and he couldn't help himself grabbing the nearest person. Trust me, this scene is super important. The class arrives at Kyoto and are immediately met by a scene of yet another man trying to grope a woman. I bet you can already tell that this has something to do with Issei's potential. How little manifests, we'll just have to find out. Later on, Issei and friends tour Kyoto but are suddenly attacked by a fox girl who accuses them of taking her mother. A fight breaks out and the crew are able to hold them off, confused about the whole misunderstanding going on. Later that night, they are summoned by Azazel and Seraphol to explain what exactly happened. The crew that attacked them were yokai, whose leader had gone missing, so it explains why they are on edge. As you'd expect, the one behind it is the Chaos Brigade, specifically their hero faction. Herein lies the first problem that comes from the aftermath from all the stuff the previous season had cut out. The hero faction of the Chaos Brigade was first brought up this season, so if you haven't read the source material, like me, you'd be confused about it too. It feels like a lot of things are missing, with them referencing events that happened off screen and everyone just has to go with it. It created a weird case for me because it felt like I had accidentally skipped out on some episodes. They do try to do something with the hero faction by showing us a flashback at the start of an episode, but it's so short and doesn't really do or explain anything, so it's just kind of awkward. So throughout my watch through, I had mild confusion, and it only gets even more confusing. Later on, the crew encountered the mystery man with despair from before. This is Soso, a descendant of Soso from the Romance of Three Kingdoms, and he launches an attack on them. He takes on Azazel while the kids take on the goons. There are two characters of note here. One is a boy named Leonardo who wields a sacred gear that lets him summon anti-devil monsters, and the other is Freed. But wait, that's not actually Freed. He looks like Freed, he's a known exorcist and top class knight of the church like Freed, he even defected from the church like Freed. But he isn't Freed. No, this is Siegfried. They are entirely different people. And I couldn't help but be even more confused. Even more so because the other characters don't really acknowledge the fact that he looks like Freed, so it had me scratching my head wondering if Freed was a filler character all this time. But hopefully, we'll get an answer later. Soso and Azazel fight a bit more before he reveals his motive. He and the hero faction simply want to test their limits and see how far they can go, taking down demons, fallen angels and gods while remaining purely human. Their fight is interrupted by a newcomer, Lafay Pendragon, who's here to punish Soso on behalf of Valley. She's also a big fan of Issei and his perverted antics. The fight doesn't go on any longer, with the bad guys leaving for now, declaring that they'll be launching another attack later that night, so the crew has to prepare. They form their battle plan, and just before they set out, Azazel presents Issei with an orb he had gotten from yet another random man who was overcome with the strong urge to grope chests. The strange orb is actually Issei's potential that had popped out of him when he opened that box a few episodes back. So his potential had actually gone around Kyoto feeling as much chest as he could before finally making his way back to him. What new power will this orb bring? I'm excited to find out. After this, Issei gets sort of an existential crisis. He's been wondering for a while now what makes a hero a hero. Being a hero was one of the goals he had ever since he was a kid, but after becoming a devil, he's not sure if that's what he wants to be anymore. Azazel gives him some pep talk, telling him just to keep on being himself and he'll eventually figure out what it is he wants to be, future Harem King aside. It doesn't take too long before we're thrown into the action. The crew gets split up, and due to the fact that Rias is absent, Issei will assume the role of king for now. He comes face to face with an opponent who showed up in that shoehorn flashback a while back, but this time, he's stronger. He's got the power to control shadows. Issei takes care of him pretty well until he goes off on a monologue. He talks about how sacred gear users are seen as lesser people, which is odd because throughout the anime we've never seen sacred gear users be treated as such. It's one thing for the bad guy to talk about his personal experience, but it's another to make them seem like it's the general way all users are treated. Anyway, Issei takes care of him easily and regroups with the rest. Also, Zenovia's sword, the Durandal, got modified and it looks even cooler. Gotta love a cooler big sword, am I right? They come face to face with the bad guys. Soso reveals his true objective. To have the Fox Yokai release so much power, it summons Great Red into their dimension, that way, Office can move back to the dimensional gap. Now the fighting breaks out, everyone gets their own opponents. The bad guys reveal their Sacred Gear and Balance Breakers. There's Siegfried with his Sacred Gear Chaos Edge Ravage, Jeanne d'Arc with her gear Blade Blacksmiths, the holy version of Sword Birth, and Heracles with the Detonation Mighty Comments. Issei is getting folded once again and has to use a full restore, but he's not going down just yet and pulls off a cold comeback, taking out one of his opponent's arms. But Soso has a full restore and heals himself back to full health too. In this very moment, every video game boss who has ever restored their HP in the middle of a fight rejoiced. Talk about unfair. Issei is outclassed yet again. He doesn't even have time to get back up when the other bad guys return with his fallen comrades in hand. They've been utterly defeated, with Issei being the only one standing. He laments on his weakness. No matter how hard he tries, no matter how big he talks, he's never really able to save anyone when it matters. In the midst of his frustration, Elsha comes in once again and gives him a good pep talk, reminding him of who he is, the Red Dragon Emperor, the Grabbing Dragon, and it's time to release that potential within him. His potential calls forth that which belongs to him, that which he treasures, the strongest weapon in his arsenal, Rias and her massive fun bags. I can't take this anime seriously sometimes. So Issei is able to get an insane power boost which lets him unlock new powers. Throughout the fight, he changes through other multiple forms based on other chess pieces to completely overwhelm Soso. This new power has now given him the ability to promote and swap through other pieces by himself without the need for the king to assign enemy lines. Can't say I'm too fond of this new upgrade cause it kind of strips the whole servant chess piece system which I was really fond of away from him and making him kind of broken. But then again, I guess that's what a balance breaker does, breaking balance. And Soso calls him out on this. He pulls off what they refer to as an illegal move, which breaks the rules of the evil piece system. Their fight kind of ends there because the bad guys have completed their objective. A portal rips open and from it emerges one of the Great Dragon Kings. Not Great Red, but the mischievous dragon, Yu Long. And with it comes the great victorious fighting Buddha, Sun Wukong. As expected, he is way too much for the brigade to handle and styles on them with ease. They're about to retreat, but Issei isn't done yet. He's able to land one more shot at Soso, which pisses him off. He's about to release some crazy power, but is stopped by Siegfried just then. They're really at their limits and can't afford to keep fighting, especially with the Monkey King around. Just before they leave, Soso, pride hurt, commands Issei to get stronger than Valley so that he can show off the real power of his Longinus spear, and vows to take him down. That is yet another rival added to the list. So they're able to rescue the leader of the yokai and get a happy ending. All's well that ends well for the crew and they head back to Tokyo, and so the curtains close on the Kyoto arc. This arc was fine. My main gripe with it comes from the choppy way everything was handled narratively, which once again I have to mention how the previous studio really did not do the series any justice. The frequent reference to things that happen that anime onlys don't know about gives me intense FOMO, and this is whole arcs we're talking about. In one scene, Issei casually mentions the fight he had with Saji in a rating game against the C3 house without even a flashback to accompany it. It makes me mildly upset that we miss out on what might have been an important character moment for people like Saji, and it brings down the whole experience. I get that's usually the case when adapting things like light novels, considering the amount of text and content that's put into each volume couldn't possibly be adapted into a 12-episode season, but it still sucks that as an anime only, I feel like I'm getting the shorter end of the stick. And do you really expect me to read a light novel? Me? Read? With an attention span comparable to a goldfish? I apologize. That was an insult to goldfishes all around the world. But yeah, so far the season has been kind of iffy for me. It also doesn't help that the pattern the anime has been going through is starting to get stale. Just how many more fights does Issei have to almost lose before he can finally hold his own against anyone? We see it happen every time, and no matter how many crazy and hilarious power-up he gets, he still can't keep up with the meta and gets power crept. And adding to the repetition is having a newcomer show up in the middle of the fight to change the tides of battle or something like that, which just leads to the fight ending. It's always the same and doesn't leave me excited for fights to come, but regardless, I do love the ever expanding world of the series and the direction it's going. Before I move on to the next arc, now would be a good time to hit that like button if you've been enjoying the video so far, and if you want to see more stuff, consider subscribing too. It would really help a lot, as well as keep me motivated to put out more videos like this for you guys. Cool, back to the story. Issei has really gotten popular in the underworld as the grabbing dragon who's out there hosting live events for all the kids to see him in his perverted glory. The usual fan service stuff happens, this time with Irina joining the fray, and Rise's younger sister, Ravel, has also transferred to his school, so you know, another girl to fall for Issei. After this, Issei and Rias are requested to go to Sarah Org's place where they meet with his bedridden mother. They are there because they want to see if they can use Issei's power of Titi translation to see if they can reach his mother who's been in a coma for years. Unfortunately, it doesn't work, but we do get some backstory on Sarah Org. He was born into the Bale family as their heir, but he lacked any kind of demonic power whatsoever, which led him to be scorned by his family. So he trained his body to the absolute limit, having the rawest physical power of any young devil ever. He and Issei share a moment where they vow to give it their all in their upcoming rating game against each other. It really builds up hype. The crew have a training session where they come up with some new battle strategies, and then afterwards attend a press conference between the Gremory and Bale houses, which is mostly just there for comedic purposes and to make fun of the fact that Issei needs Rias's boobs to power up. This light-hearted scene is followed by a pretty steamy one. Issei and Rias have wound up in his sauna together and she goes in for the kill, ready to make a move and turn Issei into a man. But Issei messes up. He calls her president, which isn't something she likes, and leaves. Up until the 4th season, the dub has been handling things differently. In the first 3 seasons, Issei had always referred to Rias as Rias in the dub, but in Japanese he's always called her president while he calls everyone else by their first names. She's never really liked this because of her obvious feelings for him. She feels he can't see her as Rias, which is what has created a wall between them. In Japanese culture, you know how much of a big deal being called by your first name is, but in the 4th season, Issei had stuck to the Japanese context of calling her president all the time, and the moment this change happened, I knew exactly what was coming next. Still on the topic of the dub, I gotta give praise to the direction the dub takes things. Aside from being all around funnier, it feels weirdly natural. You may find this weird, but I watched it dubbed with the Japanese subs on to get the best of both worlds. And the sub tends to just be filled with a lot of the, how would I put it, filler conversations that anime can be known for. But the dub tends to spice things up, which was always welcomed in my eyes. I really hope the dub can continue this energy moving forward. Anyway, things are kind of awkward between Rias and Issei now, which culminates in Rias asking what exactly she is to Issei. His response, he starts by calling her the president, which once again hurts her, so she leaves. Issei is super confused by this, and everyone gives him flack for it. I mean, yeah, the fact that he doesn't seem to understand that Rias loves him, despite everything they've been through, is kind of annoying, but everyone else seems to understand his screw up and understand Rias's feelings for him, and they look at him like he's committed some act no human ever should. While I can understand this, it just feels kind of silly, considering he's reprimanded by the same girls that are all fighting for him and his seed. I can't really blame Issei for his thought process though. He sees himself as her servant, her pawn. Yeah, he gets special treatment from her, but I guess to him, that's just her being his master. He's thought about actually trying to take things seriously with her, but he's been too afraid to want to actually make a move. The other girls come in and give him a much needed heart-to-heart. I can't show this because they get topless, and literally any frame from this scene would get this video instantly flagged. They make him come to terms with the real reason why he hasn't reciprocated or made a move on Rias or any of them really, despite how much they show their love for him. Issei is traumatized by Raynell, the first girl he was ever with, the first girl to make him believe he was loved, lied to him and straight up killed him and later on Asya. That kind of betrayal cuts deep into his heart and he never really got over it, even after taking her down with his own hands. It's a pain he never wants to experience again, hence why he's never really done anything with all the other girls. They understand this and all reassure and declare their undying love for him. Despite all the naked women on screen, this scene is probably one of, if not, the most wholesome moments in the entire anime, and I really did like it. This moment helps Issei strengthen his feelings and resolve for Rias, but it's going to be a while before we get to see how their teen drama resolves. The crew are back in the underworld, making their way to the arena where their rating game will be held. Turns out this match is a really big deal, with a lot of powerful people having their eyes on it, one of those people being Hades himself. The fight is slated for later that evening, so the club has a bit of free time. It's during this time that Riser shows up for the first time since season 1 and looks like he's been humbled, giving Ria some much needed advice on believing in her family. He also declares to Issei that he will have his payback and the next time they just happen to go up against each other, forming yet another rivalry. After this, Issei meets up with Sir Zex, who shows him a video of all his young fans who have been rooting for him and sending him words of encouragement. Sir Zex tells him that despite all the politics involved in the upcoming match, Issei shouldn't focus on all that, but instead focus on the dreams and inspiration he is to all the little devil kids all over the underworld. It's finally game time. The air is electric with excitement, but before we can get into the fighting, a few rules are explained to us. The main gist of it is that every round, each king will roll dice. The total number on each king's die will determine the total number of points both kings get, which in turn determines the kind of unit they can send out. Each unit is worth a different amount of points. A pawn is worth 1, knights and bishops are worth 3, rook 5 and queen 9. So depending on the die roll, a king could send out a rook and a knight, etc, etc. In the case of Issei, since he takes up 8 pawn pieces, he's worth 8 points. With the rules out of the way, the die are cast and the first roll is a 3. Both parties send out their knights. Ria sends out Kiba and Syra Og sends out a literal fucking knight. It's a cool fight. Gotta say, this is the first anime where I've seen a horse flash step, so I'm already digging the fights. Kiba is going all in and releases his new balance break, Glory Dragon Troopers. They're an army of CGI swords wielding swords. That's it. Thanks to this, Kiba is able to emerge victorious, effortlessly too. The next fight is Koneko and Frostvice versus the enemy's Knight and Rook. The fight is a quick one with the Grammary team winning yet again. However, Koneko got knocked out, but a win is a win. That's 0-2 now. The next match is Syra Og's Bishop against Issei. He specifically chose his bishop because she has an ability that can specifically counter Issei's perverted techniques. It's stripping. Her technique is stripping. That's it. I'm amazed at such a simple yet effective move. And to make it even funnier is the commentary behind it. How does this fight end? She makes the grave mistake of trying to strip from bottom to top instead of top to bottom, which enrages Issei and fires her for her lack of courtesy. Next match, Gaspar and Zenobia against Syra Og's next Bishop and Rook. The fight is a big character moment for Gaspar and proves his resolve as well as show just what he's capable of. Zenobia gets her powers temporarily sealed and so Gaspar has to buy time. He tanks a lot of the hits before managing to hold out long enough for Zenobia to return. He shows just how much of a man he is, doing what needs to be done in order for the Grammary House to get a win. And he's successful. The match is over in one fell swoop from Zenobia. The next matchup isn't what I expected. Sarah goes up next, but instead of Issei, he's up against Kiba, Zenobia, and Rospice. He releases his limiters and proves why he's the strongest young devil around. They try to put up a good fight, even able to take off one of his arms, but that doesn't even slow him down. This man is an absolute beast. I almost feel bad for the club the way he takes them down, winning that round. And don't worry about his arm. Thanks to the Phoenix Tear, which each team is assigned one of, he's able to fully restore. Watching the defeat of his comrades fills Issei with rage, and he steps up for the next match and quickly takes the opponent down in a single hit without even giving the opponent the chance to retaliate. But that isn't exactly what happened. Sarah had forced her to retreat because if that attack had hit her, let's just say she would have ended up on live leaks to traumatize a lot of 11-year-olds with unrestricted internet access. So the climax of the fight draws close. It's only Sarah and his pawn left, and it's only Rias, Issei and Asia left on the Gremory team. Oh, I forgot to mention that Akino had gotten knocked out before because of the enemy caught her off guard and redirected her lightning. The fight was over so fast I forgot to register it in my brain. Sarah can feel the intensity of Issei's seriousness and he wants to reciprocate. He chooses to ditch the rules and propose that they have an all-out brawl between the remaining characters. The viewers, the fans, and even the organizing committee all agree to this, increasing the hype of the game. And so, the final battle is here. Issei and Rias are up against Sarah and his pawn. Asia was opted out of the match. It's a 2v2 and Issei wastes no time in throwing the first punch. The pawn on the other hand turns into an actual frigging golden lion, which is also a sacred gear. This is the Nemean lion, the same lion that Hercules fought as part of the 12 labors, and after its defeat it was sealed into a sacred gear, becoming one of the 13 Longinus. And Rias is fighting it. Issei and Sarah slug it out and Issei is actually able to deal significant damage to him. But oh no, Rias could not take on the lion and has been gravely wounded. Guess they will have to use their designated Phoenix Tear to heal her, increasing their stakes. Oh golly gee, who would have ever seen this coming? The lion asks Sarah to wield him so he can get a power up and Sarah refuses because that kind of power would only be used in case of an emergency. Issei pulls out a Goku and wants him to wield it so that he can beat him at his strongest cause it wouldn't mean anything if he couldn't. Sarah agrees and balance breaks with the lion, getting a very shiny suit of armor called Regulus Ray Leather Rex. And this form hits Issei so hard he gets sent back to the Sacred Gear mind space. The past users want him to use his Juggernaut drive. They want him to succumb to the rage, resentment and hate welling up inside him. He almost succumbs to this, but the words of his fans and their chants for boobies reach him and he slowly fights the urge to succumb to the malice. Still in the mind space, one of the previous White Dragon users show up. You may be wondering why. Well, remember that time Issei fused a part of Vali's armor into him? Yeah, this is the personification of that fragment and he offers his help. Thanks to this, Issei is able to reject the malice and curses from the past users and achieve a new form. It's similar to a Juggernaut drive, but not quite. It gives off a bright red aura, an aura that comes from his one true love, Rias. This is a Cardinal Crimson promotion, adopting the powers of a queen. This is also when he boldly declares his love for Rias right there on national television. And now you know the real fight begins. It's an all-out slugfest and Issei is actually winning, sending Sarah flying. Just as it looks like he's about to accept defeat, the spirit of his mother shows up. She gives him words of encouragement, telling him not to give up and fight for his dream, a real shonen moment. Sarah keeps fighting because this is really all he has. If he loses, there will be nothing left for him. He's already been looked down on by his family because of his lack of demonic power, so if he does lose, he'll get scorned even more and get everything taken from him, stripping him of his ability to fight for a better demon world, one free of nepotism. It's a really sad situation that despite him being the strongest young devil around, he still doesn't think it's enough and could lose it all in an instant. Despite all the hits taken, Sarah hasn't gone down and Issei has finally run out of juice, but he's not going to stop there. Just as he's about to continue, he stopped. Sarah stands in front of him, unconscious. He's been throwing punches all this time, unconscious. A real Chad to the end. Issei is moved by this. Watching someone fight for his dreams till he lost consciousness moved him to tears. Hell, it moved me to tears. And in an amazing sign of respect, he embraces his rival, closing the curtains on this fight. To me, this takes the top spot as the best fight in the series so far. After this, the two wake up in an infirmary and are visited by Sir Zex. He informs Issei that he'll soon be promoted to a mid-ranking devil, along with Akeno and Kiba. After this, they're back in the human realm for their school festival. Azazel pulls Issei aside to inform him of the recent development in the underworld. The high-ranking devils that were backing Cyber Org have pulled out from supporting him, which sucks, but he'll just have to deal with it and move forward. The season ends with Issei finally getting some alone time with Rias. This is it. This is when he confesses his love for Rias and calls her by name. She's moved to tears and tells him how she feels the same way too. Just as they're about to lock lips, they get interrupted by the rest of the club. They tease them, but really they just show their support for their relationship. But the other girls make it clear that this won't stop them from making moves on Issei. They've well accepted their harem position. Anyway, the two are finally able to kiss, not as master and servant, but as lovers. The wholesomeness isn't over as back at Cyber Org's place, his mother has finally awoken from her long coma. It almost brings a tear to your eye watching her hold her son again. We're left with a final teaser for what's to come. In a flashback just after the fight with Soso, Azazel had met up with the Heavenly Emperor Indra and confronts him about knowing and hiding Soso's mere existence. But Indra doesn't support the brigade though. He's actually a fan of Issei, however he leaves Azazel with a warning. If Issei does become too powerful, he'll be forced to step in and erase his very soul. An ominous way to end the season. The fourth season of Highschool DxD was a real fun watch. The studio change had caught me off guard, but I quickly adjusted to it. It was an upgrade in every way from the previous season, and that's a rare case when it comes to anime changing studios. The better animation was the icing on the cake as fights actually felt like fights and not slightly better slideshows. You can tell the studio really handled it with care, and I'm also glad that very little CGI was used, especially for the character models. Like I half expected the complex designs of Balance Breaker Issei and powered up Cyber Org to be done in CGI, but they came out looking really good, even with all the different Issei forms. Another aspect the season got an upgrade in was in its fan service. They generally looked better, but shockingly enough, there was a lot less fan service in this season, which I think made them better. Back then, we would get bare-chested shots at least once per episode. Even in fights, women would have their clothes blasted off, which got pretty annoying most of the time, but then this season, unless Issei was using dress break, clothes remained intact, which I am thankful for. The only time we got full-on fan service was when it was consensual. You might not realize it, but it appears that the series is slowly leaning more into the shonen than the ecchi, which makes it a lot more enjoyable in my opinion. I have no problems with the anime on a production standpoint and would love to see more of it if we ever do get a 5th season. But it's been almost 6 years since the season came out and one can only wonder when it will be coming. But I really do hope if a new season does come, it's able to shake up the formula because the repetition is really starting to show, which could end up becoming stale for me. But the characters, specifically Issei, really helped to make the story fun and a lot more engaging. Still wish we got a lot more out of character interactions, but at this point I'm used to it. Highschool DxD has an incredibly grand story and just keeps getting better with each season, but at the same time it doesn't quite feel like there's a set direction the story is going in. We get introduced to all these new characters and plot points 4 seasons in, and we still don't know where exactly all this is leading up to. It all feels like one big setup and does help the story feel grand, but we're yet to reach a truly pivotal moment in the story. But I'm sure when that does happen, it'll blow my mind. For now, I'll just join all the other anime onlys in waiting for the next season because reading scares me. Thanks for making it to the end of this video, and I guess the end of this series. It has been a long and crazy journey getting here, but it was fun nonetheless. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and if for some strange reason you started this season to season review from this video first, what is wrong with you? But then at the same time, check out the rest. This has been your very favorite slice of bread. Stay toasty.